for January the 9th, 2017. Would you all stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance? Flag lead us, please.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. May be seated. Welcome on a cold January night, but it's been colder. Mr. Summer, roll call, please.
Wait.
Public hearing.
Yeah, yeah.
We do that before public hearing? I guess so. I thought we still had to do roll call first, so we'll go ahead and do the public hearing first, and I will acquiesce to you.
Okay, the public hearing is on the issue of the retire of Mrs. Connie Rose and being reemployed in the same position as Assistant Treasurer at Salina City Schools. At your seats tonight, I passed out a comparison of what her current salary is versus what we've kind of agreed to going forward with a rehire. As you can see, overall savings to the district is just over $43,000 for wages and related benefits, and provided that insurance is also waived at this time, an additional $19,000 for a total savings to the district of about $62,000. Do you have any questions for me? Or are there any comments from the audience on this issue?
I would have a question, Mr. Summer. It says here that Mrs. Rose will be going to 4 days a week, Tuesday through Friday, or I could ask Connie, is that enough time to get everything done? And
If I use Brenda, Brenda's in our office half days, so I think we can get it done.
okay.
And are those days flexible? Let's say, for instance, for some reason you want to do Monday, skip Tuesday, just as long as it's 4 days, it'll be.
That's what Tom has said, they'll be flexible, but for the most part, I'll try to stick with Mondays, so everybody knows.
I think that's good.
This would begin February 1st.
And are you allowed to stay in the position now?
I just won't get separate or pension checks until April.
Okay.
I just want to say Connie's an asset to the district, and I'm glad we're getting to keep her for a while.
Yes. And I tell you what, with the savings that we're having and your agreement to do that, I also would say I appreciate it. You're helping us, and you're staying in your position, so thank you.
Thank you. Well, I agree too. She keeps the expertise that she's used all these years right in the same place, and that's invaluable.
With that, our public hearing would be closed if there's no further comments.
Yeah, we'll close the public hearing unless there's nothing for us to vote on at this time.
No, not tonight.
We have to wait another 2 weeks.
That's why we are scheduling a meeting for the 30th.
Mhm. So on the 30th, we come back, and at that point, she'll be rehired.
We'll have an agenda item to rehire her, along with whatever regular business we might have that evening. So.
Okay, very good. Again, thank you, Connie. Now we'll move on to the roll call, Mr. Summer.
Mr. Sell.
Here.
Mrs. Piper.
Here?
Mrs. Voorhees.
Here.
Mrs. Schellenberger.
Here.
And Mr. Gilmore is absent this evening.
He is absent. I think he's at a sporting event. Moving on to item 4, every year there is a reorganizational meeting, or actually an organizational meeting, where we choose officers for the Board of Education. I have been privileged to serve as president for the past year. I do understand that there custom for the last several years that we change this position every year, but we can certainly discuss what anybody thinks about that.
There's never, at least in my years of experience, there's never been anything written in stone. Oftentimes, the vice president has moved right on up and kind of rotated it around, but there's nothing that stipulates one way or the other.
Okay. Mrs. Voorhees, what are your thoughts? First of all, do you want to be president?
No, thank you.
Okay. And Mrs. Piper, I asked earlier, and she also declined, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And you were going to?
You can duke it out.
No, that's what we're saying. And Mr. Schellebarger, if you would like to change seats, that's certainly okay with me.
Well, I think you need to do a call for nomination.
I know, but I'm just informally discussing this.
Well, I'm following you.
Okay. Is there any further discussion, though, before we ask for nominations? Okay. Let's open the floor for nominations for the office of president. I guess that would be the correct protocol. I'll nominate Mr. Schellebarger for president of the Salina School Board for the years 2017, I guess 2017.
Does that require a second?
I think it does.
No,
No,
this
I
is
think-
just open nominations.
Oh, okay.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
So we nominate everybody right now? I mean, if,
No, I mean, if you nominate Mr. Shell, are there any other,
How
Yeah.
long you will be here?
yeah.
are there any other nominations from the floor, I guess?
Are there any other nominations? If not, roll call, please.
Okay, Mr. Sell,
Yes.
Mrs. Voorhees,
Yes.
Mrs. Piper,
Aye.
and Mr. Schellebarger.
Yes.
For the office of vice president,
Where do you want to take that one?
I guess I'll nominate Mr. Sell for that then. Let you two switch seats next year.
but I'm not gonna literally switch seats tonight, Mr. Schellebarger, I'm very comfortable, I want you to know. Are there any other nominations? Mr. Summer?
Okay, Mrs. Voorhees,
Yes.
Mrs. Piper,
Aye.
Mr. Schellebarger,
Yes.
Mr. Sell.
Yes. Mr. Schellebarger, I think you get to chair the rest of the meeting.
You can have me with the office.
Yeah, we got you sworn in.
Okay.
You didn't hear that.
Do you want to do this as one oath, or do you want me to read the oath for each one of you? How do you want me to do this?
Why don't you just do it as one, and we'll switch, you know, when it says for which position, I'll add vice.
Well, I'll read it as such.
Okay.
I think you did it together last year, didn't you? I think so. You gotta stand up, raise your hand, and all that good kind of stuff. Come on, guys. Where's that book I gave you on parliamentary procedure?
Do you duly swear that you will support the Constitution of the State of Ohio and the Constitution of the United States, and that you will faithfully perform and discharge the duties as President and Vice President of the Board of Education of Salina City School District in Mercer County, Ohio?
I do.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, do I have a motion to set the agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Mrs. Piper moved and Mrs. Voorhees seconded.
Okay, Mrs. Piper,
Aye.
Next, we have appointment of board liaisons, and
Here are the current assignments, Mr. Schellberger, and if possible, I would like to stay where I am.
I think everybody's
So,
fine with.
yes.
And so we'll have Mr. Sell as legislative, Mr. Gilmore as tax abatement, Mrs. Voorhees as community, Mrs. Piper as Head Start, and I will stay with student achievement. Next, we need an approval of the consensus agenda and organizational procedures, so I need a motion and a second.
I'll make that motion as well.
And I will second
We don't vote on this, though, correct?
It's part of the consensus agenda.
Mhm.
As you do see, most of our meetings are set for the third Monday of the month. A couple variations, we do have January 30th down in regards to the rehire vote, that we have to have that date.
I do know I have a conflict with February 27th, but if you have 4 other members available, that shouldn't be a problem.
February 20th was a holiday.
Right.
Mr. Summer was not going to be available that day. That's why we backed it up to the 27th.
I don't think that would be either.
And we moved the August meeting up to the second Monday so we could have that meeting prior to the first teacher workday.
I'd say just leave it as it is, and then if you don't have a quorum, move it when you get closer to that date.
it. So we're doing 27.
Yeah, I would, I just wanted to make you aware. And how about that September 18th? Is that the 3rd, or is that moved back due to that?
No, that would be the third
Okay.
Monday. I do not plan on going to the Punderson retreat. There had been also some board members discussing the time, the 6 p.m. I don't know if there was any conversation about the start time of the meetings or perhaps changing the summer.
I have a question on that quickly. I think that Cindy and Matt discussed one time, unless, correct me here, during the summer, didn't you guys move it back until 7 o'clock?
We used to always meet at 7 o'clock. When I first came on the board, it was always at 7. I'm not sure where we made the change, but I do think it had to do with people working in town, not wanting to go home and come back.
Okay.
So, I'm fine either way.
Well, I guess if it's not broken, we don't fix it. It's just my attitude, I guess.
I'm okay with it as is.
Do you want it later in the summer months? To me, that doesn't necessarily make a big difference, you know, if you get out quick, you still got sunlight,
Right.
so.
I say we stay where we are.
Thank you, Mr. Schellenberger.
Okay, we have the calendar dates, then do we need to read through the following materials that we have, BCD?
I think so.
Yes, if you'd like me to do that, I will do that. Number, letter B is to authorize the treasurer to pay all bills as they are presented to him, provided those funds are available in the appropriate accounts approved by the Board of Education. Number 2, invest interim and/or inactive funds at the most productive interest rates whenever funds are available. 3, request advances on local taxes due to the school district from the county auditor where funds are available, along with the president of the Board of Education.
Quick question regarding this. Mr. Summer, when there are funds that look like they've been straight zeros for a while, I mean, obviously they're inactive, 2 questions, and this was asked before. Why don't we terminate those? And then the second question is, how can we invest anything in a productive manner if there's nothing in there? It says right here, invest interim or inactive funds at the most productive interest rates.
Total fund.
That's,
Yeah, I think they're talking about the total funds of the school district.
So, but back to question one, how long do we keep a fund in the books here if it's straight zeros across the board?
I definitely can't answer that one. I know that, again, the accounting system we use is rather antiquated, and I know that sometimes those funds just hang out there for whatever reason.
There are a couple that have money in them and are inactive, and I
Yes.
assume that's what that's referring to, is those that do have money in them. I know there's one for softball. I see that every month almost,
Well,
and I know that's
some-
there for a
There's some
reason.
student activity
Yeah.
accounts that really are inactive.
Yeah.
But until either the principal or who was ever involved with that activity says it's time to get rid of these funds, we'll continue to carry them.
Well, okay, I guess my question is, if it says beginning balance is zero, and current available balance is zero, those were the ones that I was referencing, or were referencing. But, you know, if you can ever figure that one out, I'd just like to know why we keep them there if they look like they should
Can
be.
you, provide me with just one of those funds?
Let's see. No, I just had it, now. Let's see if I do it.
Western Field Studies.
There you go. I think that trip's been
Zero?
closed. Auxiliary service, okay, FY 2017, that one makes sense. School accounting network starts with zeros and current available balance zeros.
What document are you looking at, Mr. Chairman?
Let's see, I think it's attachment 2.
Well, that's where I was.
And the one that I was actually looking up here was, I think,
Oh, that's AJA Girls Soccer State. No, I mean, that starts out with a beginning balance of zero, but then it is active throughout the year.
if you go to,
Are those the kind you're referring to?
the one I was actually looking at, on the third page of that, there was auxiliary service. It's fund number 401, and it's, I think, 9917, or 99, right in there, 9916, 15, straight zeros across. So I'm looking at it wrong.
I see it too, but mine says monthly revenue of, oh, 77,066, is that on that line?
Yeah, and then if you go up 2 or 3 to 2013, it says beginning balance, if this is the right one, $6. I just wondered, you know, why we would keep
To
a,
be honest, 668, I can't answer that, but there shouldn't be any money in that account.
okay.
That is a grant fund that should have been closed.
Yeah, but it's 2013.
Right.
This thing's 4 years old, and we still have $6 hanging there, and I was looking at that earlier, wondering why we would keep that account open.
So we can close that out.
Okay, I mean, maybe just check these out and see if any of them need closed and put back in the general fund or wherever they go.
And we can invest that $6.68.
Well, as far as investing, they're not invested by particular funds. They're grouped and invested as a whole, so.
Okay. I was just reading this under 2, and it made it look like we were putting inactive funds in the most productive interest rates. I thought, okay.
I think that if you go to Ohio Revised Code and look at the definitions of active, inactive, and interim funds,
It's different.
it's different than what you're thinking.
Okay.
So, I mean,
Any other discussion? You want to continue, Dr. Smeaton?
Yes, sir. Letter C, a resolution to establish a board service fund for the Salina Board of Education in the amount of $7,500. That's also the maximum allowable amount. Letter D, approve the following organizational resolutions. Appointment of Dr. Ken Schmeezing and Tom Summers, purchasing agents for the school district during calendar year 2017. Authorize the superintendent to employ such temporary personnel as needed for emergency situations. Personnel will be presented for approval by the board at the next meeting and/or at a special board meeting. Number 3, authorize the treasurer and superintendent to attend professional meetings outside the school district for the benefit of the Salina City School District. Number 4, authorize the memberships in the following organizations: OASBO, BASA, OSBA, OASA, that was AASA, excuse me, AVA, OVA, Ohio Trade and Industrial Education Association, VSA, Salina Mercer County Chamber of Commerce, Grand Lake Safety Council, Northwest Ohio Educational Research Council. 5, authorize the payment of out-of-pocket expenses for the TriStar Advisory Council members representing Salina City Schools.
Quick question, Dr. Schmeezing, would you explain what that means for number 5? The out-of-pocket expenses, what are we talking about?
Now, perhaps the TriStar Advisory Council would have an all-day session, and there may be some expenses for meals and such that we would reimburse those costs. Mileage could be a cost as well if they have a meeting in Columbus.
Mr. Busher?
I didn't know that was on there.
Every year it is.
Is it okay? Which we might have some meetings, like I know one of our board members is going to go down to Columbus to be on, to help decide what the new contract, the new construction curriculum is going to be. So if he goes by himself, I guess, and we've done that before. I never knew that was on there, quite honestly, so I'm glad I learned something tonight.
But this would only be for Salina City Schools
For
represented.
those, correct.
And are we always a member of the chamber?
Have been for years.
Okay, is there anyone that would like to remove an item from the consensus agenda? Hearing none. Mr. Summer, you want to call the roll on approval of the consensus agenda items?
Mrs. Piper,
Aye.
Mrs. Voorhees,
Yes.
Mr. Sell,
Yes.
Mr. Shellbarger.
Yes. Someone want to take the insurance coverage? I'm saying no right now for mine.
Is that for the health?
Health and dental.
Health and dental, Mr. Shellbarger's no's.
No for me.
Mrs. Voorhees, no on health and no on dental.
Yes, please.
2 noes for Mrs. Piper.
Mrs. Piper, no on health, no on dental. Mr. Sal.
Likewise.
Okay, at this time, the organizational meeting is adjourned. And we will call to order our regular meeting on January the 9th, 2017. That's me, I'm sorry,
So you want to just hold it up to the microphone?
that was loud. Mr. Summer, you want to call the roll again, or?
I will. Mr. Shellbarger,
Yes, here.
Mr. Sell,
Here.
Mrs. Voorhees,
Here.
Mrs. Piper,
Here.
and of course, Mr. Gilmore is out.
And I will make the motion to set the agenda,
I'll second.
seconded by Mrs. Piper.
Okay, Mr. Shellbarger,
Aye.
Mrs. Piper,
Aye.
Mrs. Voorhees,
Aye.
Mr. Sell,
Yes.
first item is reception of public. Mr. Stewart, anything to offer?
CA doesn't have anything.
All right, and I don't, is there an Oaksy rep? I see none. And we have School Board Recognition Month, January.
It is my honor to let you know that we do celebrate School Board Recognition Month. OSBA created an electronic School Board Recognition Month kit, so we're going to be using that kit. Certainly, each of the board members, Ms. Voorhees, Mr. Schellebarger, Mr. Sell, and Ms. Piper, are all receiving certificates which state in sincere appreciation for exemplary leadership and service to public schools, presented to each of the individuals of Salina City Schools, School Board Recognition Month, January of 2017, signed by the OSBA President and also the Executive Director.
Okay, next we need a motion for approval of a consensus agenda.
So moved.
Mr. Snell, Mrs. Voorhees, seconds. Mr. Summer, your treasurer's report when you're ready.
Okay. First item, I'm asking you to approve the minutes of December 19th, 2016. I'm also asking you to approve the financial report for the month of December showing monthly revenues and expenditures of $1,663,514 and $2,711,080 respectively. Ask you to approve the summary of cash and investments. That should be as of December 31st, showing a balance of $10,710,921. Asking you to approve the checks written for December 2016 of $2.443 million. Approve the SM2 report for December 2016. And then as a compliance issue, ask you to approve the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor. And then approval of additional activity budgets for 2017. And then finally, to accept a donation from All-Star Driving to the high school of 3 $100 gift certificates to aid those students who are in need for driver's education and perhaps cannot afford to pay for it all.
Could I ask you to explain something, Mr. Summer?
You can?
Just kind of for the public, back to item 2. Our monthly revenue for December was $1.6 million, and our monthly expenditures were $2.7 million. Would you explain why our expenditures were $1.1 million over our revenue?
In school finance, taxes come in twice a year, February and August.
So we're waiting.
Yeah, the February report, it'll be the opposite way. The tax revenue, the revenues will far outweigh the expenditures. It's just the cycle.
What time in February do we get those in?
When I asked the county auditor, they start the advances probably the first week of February. And it's usually, I think they settle either the late February or first part of March is when they finally settle.
Thank you.
I have a question about the $100 gifts. Are there any criteria the students have to meet? Have you guys heard anything about that?
No, they let those up to us.
And how the students were selected?
Correct.
Okay.
And is 3 enough? I mean, it's very nice that they're offering that money, but is it?
If you would like to add to that, that would certainly be accepted.
I think that's usually the president that takes care of that expense.
I think last year they only gave us 1.
I don't recall.
Any other questions for Mr. Summer? Dr. Schmeezing?
Thank you, Mr. Schallenberger. Under Personnel, approved to accept the resignation of Ashley Ingram, Head Start teacher, effective January 1st, 2017. Number 2, approval of a 60-day probationary contract for Amy Egler, family advocate of Head Start. Number 3, approval of a 60-day probational contract for Tanya McDonald, bus driver for Head Start for 2 hours per day. 4, approval of a 60-day probationary contract for Carol Hayes, Head Start bus aide. That's 2 hours per day. Number 5, approval of a change of contract for Diane Davenport from teacher assistant at the high school to secretary at the high school. Number 6, approval of a change of contract for Janet Adams, educational aide at the intermediate school, requesting 2 deduct days, February 9th and 10th.
Is Diane Davenport currently in that position, but it's like a secretary's position, but it's the teacher's aide?
She is currently in the secretary position, pretty much handling the attendance.
Okay.
That was the position that Kathy Bowman previously had.
Right.
Do we have a substitute in the Head Start position? Or do we have somebody in there on probationary?
For Ashley's position, I have a TA that meets the qualifications, who's in there temporarily.
Next, we have a resolution to approve to advertise bids for a 3-year contract for mowing and field marking. Under the superintendent's report, number 1, approve to accept the retirement of June Scott, social studies teacher at the high school, effective May 31st. Number 2, approve to accept the retirement of Chuck Smith, English teacher at the high school, effective May 31st. Number 3, recommend approval of a change of contract for Julie Hirko, Title I teacher at Immaculate or IC School, from 0.5 FTE to 0.75 FTE, effective January 10th. That additional pay will come from auxiliary service funds. Number 4, recommend approval of a change of contract for Deb Schroyer from Food Service Assistant Level 6 on the Executive Secretary Compensation Plan to Food Service Director, which would be in Cluster 1, Level 4 on the Administrative Compensation Plan. This contract would be effective January 10th, 2017 to July 31st, 2019. Number 5, recommend approval of Joan Homan as an athletic worker for the 2016-17 school year.
Would you explain the change in Mrs. Schroyer's position, Dr. Schmeezing?
Correct. Deb is here this evening, but certainly she has been working as the food service director the last couple of years, even though that was not her title. She has been responsible for completing the evaluation of the managers in each of the school buildings. It's certainly long overdue to have her in an administrative position as opposed to a secretarial position. I asked Deb to be here in case you might have any questions for her specifically.
So Deb, you're good with this?
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Well, and it requires 50 extra work days, right?
50 extra workers.
No more summers off.
No, no, summer's always on one.
For the resolution, attachment number 3 had the 2017-2018 school calendar. Probably the biggest change from last year's school calendar is that we have set October the 9th as a common in-service day across Mercer County. So all Mercer County schools will be planning an in-service day.
I'm sorry, what was that date, Dr.?
October 9th. It should be in blue on that calendar.
Gotcha.
Is that also the WOEA day it used to be?
Well, I don't think it's what it's considered, but, you know, WEA Day was supposed to be for like in-service,
Right.
you know, professional development stuff.
But this will be something that you'll plan locally, or you're going to do joint in-service with all the county schools?
join in service with all the county schools.
Also on our calendar here, I'm looking at the month of May, I would imagine L24 is last day for student exams or something,
Last day for students, May 24th.
and then teachers would be the 25th.
That is correct.
Sometimes we used to have the graduation or actually commencement dates on the calendar, and as I understood, it was going to be on Friday the 25th. Is that still correct?
We haven't made that determination yet for next year. However, this year,
I mean, for
it
some
is
reason,
on Friday night.
Friday the 25th will be commencement exercises, is that right?
We have not made that determination for
Well, that's,
2018.
I got you.
For 2017, though, yes, it is at 8 p.m. on Friday night, the last week of school.
Understand, thank you.
You're welcome. Attachment number 4 is the monthly report from Head Start. Amy and Carla are both here if you have any comments. I'll let Mr. Schellenberger, entertain those comments. Excuse me, Mr. Schellenberger.
Is enrollment up? That's what I thought from our last, good.
We have, if you drive west, coming into Salina by McDonald's, east, you'll see we have a big billboard up for recruitment. So we
Didn't see that.
Have to drive out there.
Come in that way.
And we've ordered new recruitment flyers and posters, and so we have a full-blown marketing campaign.
Well, I knew you were thinking of doing that, and obviously it paid off.
Yeah,
Good.
How many students do you have currently?
119,
And a year ago, roughly?
probably around 130.
So it was down lower than that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you have budgeted every year for like an advertising campaign like this?
We did this year. Because I knew that recruitment was gonna be an issue. It's not unique to us here in Mercer County. It's, actually nationwide. But it's hitting Ohio pretty hard with state-funded preschool slots, because everyone's targeting 4-year-olds. And so, the good thing for us here is because I oversee both programs, so I can put children where they belong based on what their needs are.
So when everybody's targeting 4-year-olds, you're referring to private preschool?
Child cares, ECE slots, ESC programs, Head Starts.
Thank you.
And the 2-hour delays for this upcoming schedule are, felt that they were good and productive, and he wants to continue with those.
That is correct. The state is also requiring us to log so many hours for the teacher-based teams and the building leadership teams. So those 2-hour delays fit right into that schedule for state reporting purposes.
Sorry, I regressed there, but.
And I'd like to thank Amy for the monthly financial statement. I appreciate that.
Under TriStar, approval to accept the donation of a 2001 Buick LeSabre for the TriStar Career Compact Automotive Program. This car is being donated by Matt and Stacy Stetler and has a value of $2,247.
Where do you come up with that amount, Mr. Busher? $2,247.
Take the two different auto, they rate them out, and we just take the middle.
Okay.
Unless it's Mr. Schellenberger's, we don't give you many.
I drive until they drop. Okay, with that, do we have any removal of items from the consensus agenda? Hearing none, Mr. Summer, you want to call the roll?
Sure. Mr. Sell?
Well, let's see, we're voting no, I guess, correct? If there's nothing to remove.
This is approval.
This is approval. Yes.
Mrs. Voorhees?
State game.
Mrs. Piper?
Aye.
Mr. Schellenberger?
Yes. Is there any other business from the board or administrators?
I think if there's no other administrative reports, we were thinking about adding an executive session. Is that correct, Dr. Schmusing?
Correct, that would come, currently, we do not have any other business or any other informational items.
Then I would like to add it to make a new item 8. And item 8 would be executive session.
You're
And it
making a
would
motion.
be,
Are you making the motion to go into executive?
I am, I'm just placing it correctly on the agenda. And it would be for investigation of charges, complaints. And is that it?
Correct, item number 8 on that form.
So I will.
So moved by Mr. Sell, seconded by myself.
Mr. Sell,
Yes.
Mr. Schellenberger,
Yes.
Mrs. Voorhees,
Yes.
and Mrs. Piper.
Aye.
And I believe we will not be conducting any business while there, so.
Thanks for coming.
Coming around.
Thank you.